So right now, the government is slowly confirming that UFOs are real, but it also seems to kind of be making no difference in how most people actually live. Why do you think that is?
Wow, that's a great question right off the bat. I think people will come to the conclusion that it will affect how they live. I think there's so much going on in the world that's easy to be distracted and to think like it's not a big deal, especially if you don't know the facts behind why disclosure would be so important for humanity.
You're listening to Mind Love with me, Melissa Monti.
So tell me some of those. What are the facts behind why disclosure is so important?
Oh, I love this question. I try to keep it 101 and then I go 701 with it. But the basic fact behind it of why people should care about UAP disclosure, because it will affect your life. I know we all have to pay bills. What's the big deal if there's E.T.s out there? But let me break it down for you. So right now we know pretty much for sure, and don't trust me, go trust the whistleblowers, that there's been an 80-year cover-up of a legacy program, a crash retrieval, picking up and recovering exotic technology not in this world, reverse engineering it through the aerospace companies, and then a media disinformation campaign to keep everyone thinking it's ridiculous. But that technology that they've been reverse engineering for 80 years, that technology could change the world. The biggest rumored one that I think is 100% real is these free energy devices, these limitless energy devices that these UFOs or UAPs or these craft, whatever you want to call them, use to operate. That alone could revolutionize the energy systems in the world and potentially alleviate poverty and war and all the things, because energy would be equal, it wouldn't cost anything, and it'd be limitless altogether. That's the number one reason, Melissa, I think people should be concerned about it, the basic nuts and bolts. But the reason why I'm really into it is I'm way beyond that now. This is when it gets more into the deeper aspects of contact, because Dr. John Mack, who was the head of Harvard psychiatry until he passed away in the early 2000s, he wrote several books on alien contact. And what he determined was contact with E.T.s, and I'm not talking about just a simple UFO sighting, which can change your life forever. I'm talking about repeated contact. He called it one of the fastest ways to enlightenment. It's one of the quickest ways to expand your consciousness. What do I mean by that? People who have regular contact change everything about their life. They change their jobs. They have more compassionate in their relationships. They care more about the environment. They literally open their mind up to possibilities they couldn't think of before. It's literally a consciousness expanding machine. And once you get deeper into UFOs and contact, the more you realize it's not about aliens on another planet or E.T.s. I don't even like the word aliens, by the way. People on another planet. It's about the nature of reality. It's about spirituality. It's about afterlife. And the deeper you get into it and the more it's uncovered in these hidden memories these people have, you get into reincarnation and you get into these beings being with us over multiple lifetimes as we grow. Now, if I just got too deep there for some in the audience, I apologize, but that's where the research goes. It goes from technology all the way to like the nature of the universe and why we are here as people in this world.
Okay, I absolutely love this. I'm going to just throw it out there. I don't like the word conspiracy theorist, but I am an intense pattern recognizer. I don't dismiss any of these things.
I like
and
that.
There's so many places I want to go with this, because have you ever gone down the rabbit hole on Tartaria?
No, please break it down for me.
So I highly recommend going down this rabbit hole, but it's basically the understanding that if you look at all old maps, like hundreds of years ago, there's a large region called Tartaria, and the old maps just had this. It's where Russia was and is and whatever, but we just don't talk about it. So it's one thing to change the name of a region on a map, but it's another thing to not ever mention it in history books or anything like that. And the people that have explored this have a belief that aliens were among us at that time, which is how the pyramids got built, all of these advanced things. The official narrative says that we put up all of these temporary world fairs that look like these really ornate structures, and then we just took them down. But conspiracy theorists or pattern recognizers are like, why would we do that? Why would we put these up and take them down? We can't even replicate some of those things today. And there are a lot of building structures that they say that we have, that we built during a time of horse and buggy that we literally cannot replicate today. Things that look like they utilize things like frequency and structure in order to heal people. It goes really deep. But a basis of that Tartaria argument is that the reason we were able to access that is because aliens were among us even back then. Does that sound like something that could be possible?
Oh, absolutely. And by the way, I have a buddy at work who's deep into what you just explained, and there's definitely something going on in our ancient past that is bizarre. I'm more focused, or have done more research on like Atlantis and Lemuria and those civilizations. And also, I know what you're bringing up about the pyramids and how strange they are. How could they be built? How could those blocks be put so closely together way back in the day? There's some theories that I see today, like mainstream theories, that don't make sense. They show guys on YouTube like putting together large blocks. I'm like, there's no way. There's no way. Is there something going on in our distant past? I think 100%. For me, it's hard. Like, I'm not an expert on the ancient history of like alien, astronaut theory per se. But what I do know is this, is that it seems like it's been with us since the beginning of time. It seemed like the E.T.s really started showing up or really paying attention to us in the 40s when we started detonating nuclear weapons. They swarmed like moths to a flame. That's why the Southwest is so interesting, because we had our first nuclear squadron down there, and that's where we were testing nuclear bombs, and they showed up there. There's multiple crashes, including the famous one of Roswell. But way before that, they were also with us. You see it in ancient paintings. You see all the major religions you could interpret as UFO events. Like the Lady of Fatima, I know that's more recent, in the 1900s, reads like a classic ET contact event. A light comes down, there's messages, there's transformation, it's UFO-y, it goes back in the sky. So these things have been with us for a long time. Have they helped us build and give us advanced technology? That's the rumors. I can't prove that stuff, but if I had a bet on it, Melissa, I would definitely put money on it, because it seems there's too many strange things covered up in the distant past. And it's also those buildings like in Indonesia and stuff where like one section's really low and the oldest, and it's like the most advanced and the most like put together really well. And then other civilizations like forgot and like built on top of it. And by the time you get to the top, it's like a shack. But someone 80,000 years ago knew how to build the most incredible structure of all time. I mean, something clearly had to be going on. Listen, I know we're intuitive and humans are really smart, but like, I don't know, man, that's way too advanced, way too far in the past. I know a couple of historians right now listening will be like, you don't know what you're talking about, Josh. And maybe I don't, but I can tell you that it's worth exploring. It is a mystery, and we need to figure it out, whether it's ET or advanced humans in the past. Because if it was advanced humans, that's a big deal too.
Yeah. And, to some people, this might sound ignorant, but in my mind, sometimes the most educated may also be the most indoctrinated into one narrative that
totally
makes it harder to open your mind. And we know certain types of information can change the way that we think. There's this term that researchers use, ontological shock, for what happens when somebody has contact experience and then their entire model of reality breaks. I feel like I've gone through that a number of times. But I know that you've sat with people who have had this happen. What does a person look like on the other side of that?
Wow, great question. So, God, we have so much content here at Gaia about people transforming their lives, experiencers going through a contact events. It's where I I'm a UFO advocate, but it's where I spend most of my time researching that I'm trying to nail down. So, let's break it down to some of the people I've talked to. So, on Gaia, I've interviewed multiple special forces people on Cosmic Disclosure who had contact experiences and it changed their life forever. Two of them in particular, I call them the Mikes. Mike Herrera and Mike Batista. Mike Batista was a Green Beret. Mike Herrera was a Marine. I'll talk about each one briefly. They explain how they transform. So Mike Herrera is a fascinating story, actually. In early 2000s, he just happened to be in Indonesia with the Marines helping with disaster recovery. And he stumbled across a top secret program that had a triangle UFO that was picking things up from Indonesia. I'm not going to get into all the details of that. It was kind of a weird scenario that I could talk about for an hour. Anyways, the people who were controlling that situation scared Mike off, and his team was like, don't talk about this, get out of here. Now that he saw basically a reverse engineered human craft. Now, how does this lead to transformation? After that, spontaneously, unrelated to that event, he started having contact experiences himself through meditative states. There's something that's big in our community called CE5. Dr. Stephen Greer kind of developed that term, but that idea of connecting with ETs through consciousness has been around for a long time. So Mike, in meditative states, started making contact, and it changed everything in his life. I mean, even on our programs, he talked about being in a really, really dark spot mentally. And he was able to turn that around because of his contact with E.T.s. And from them, he became a better person. He started expressing himself different. He felt mission driven. He started talking about his experiences, the nature of the universe, how important oneness is and consciousness. He almost became like spiritual after being a hardcore like Marine. He came to the softer side. Now he's still a hardcore Marine guy, a super yoked dude. He's awesome. I love Mike. But it radically changed his whole life and gave him a new mission. Now Batista is it's a different scenario. Mike Batista was a Green Beret. He actually has participated in these quasi-government and in front of the military / in the public center groups called, this one group in particular called Skywatcher. If that's familiar to anyone in your audience, a man named Jacob Barber came forward on News Nation talking about how him and a team of ex-special forces and people who are in these legacy programs are making contact through consciousness protocols. They even have a bunch of shows on YouTube where you can see it. Like, literally the evidence of disclosure is already here. People just got to wake up to it. Mike was a part of that team and participated with them. And in these meditative states, he would reach out and connect with these craft and bring them in. And they would say hi to each other through consciousness, literally teams of people meditating and reaching out and connecting with E.T.s. That's the key to understanding all of this is consciousness. But this, back to your question though, this changed his life completely. He went from a Green Beret dealing with, issues of being in the military for a long time and doing things, darker things for the service of this country, not dark, but heroic things he has to do. And this experience radically changed him too. He went from like a hardcore Marine or a Green Beret, tough guy, to basically a spiritual dude. And it changed everything in his life, just like Mike. He opened up consciousness. He's mission driven about getting this out to the world because he realizes how important it is that we talk about these subjects. It's not just about the tech. It's about how we're all one. There's a oneness out there. We're even one with the E.T.s. They're all loving. They're benevolent. They always when you're around these beings, by the way, it's so life-changing. I haven't been around them, but when you really talk to the people who've done it and you don't listen to the movies, which makes it seem like it's all fear porn, these guys literally interact with these beings that feel like they feel like angels. They're literally they describe them as angels. They don't look like angels. I'm not saying they have wings and like a classic looking angel, but the connection, the oneness they feel changes them forever. They can't believe they feel that accepting love from these beings they'd never met before. And I've heard this from Jacob Barber, from Mike Batista, from Jonathan Weygandt in Peru in the 90s. There's a bunch of people who said this. When you're close to these beings, you feel this connection and it changes you forever. You realize you're capable of that love. You realize there's more going on. You start to connect it to spirituality and the afterlife, and it just opens them up forever. So those are just the military guys who've the more credible opened up. But I work with experiencers all the time. I mean, I just dropped a reel last night on Instagram about a guy who I did a documentary on. And this man, his name is Raphael Lugo, but his rapping name is called Skits, the PLK. He was called Skits because people thought he was schizo because of his contact experiences. But he changed his rapping style. This is like a 6'2" tough dude who changed his rapping style from gangster rap to conscious rap because of his experiences. Because of the contact he had, he literally started using his music for good instead of, it wasn't using it for negativity. It just wasn't really, he was just hardcore gangster rap. And now all his lyrics are about consciousness and connecting with Palladians and meditation. And it's beautiful. He changed his whole life. This dude struggled with it too. It's so hard, man. You have these memories where at first it's dark, right? A lot of experiences out there are stuck in a negative state. And I'm not trying to, that might be 100% real. But what I've learned and through the work of Dr. John Mack and Skits is that once you get over that initial, all I remember is being on a table and something kind of dark was happening to me, maybe reproductive related. Once you get through that memory, which is, it's interesting that they remember that first because your brain kind of remembers the most intense things first. Once you get through that, you start to realize that's just one aspect of your contact experience. And there's so much more going on. And it actually leads more to love and consciousness and transformation and the afterlife and spirituality than it does about this so-called hybridization program, which everyone talks about, which seems dark. And it might be. Again, I'm not trying to, I have to be careful because there's a lot of people who have very negative feelings about their contact experiences. And I want to honor those people because I don't fully 100% know, right? I'm just a heavy researcher. But if you look at the work of John Mack, the work of Dr. John Mack, you look at the Free Foundation survey, which was done by Edgar Mitchell, the former astronaut. He started a foundation to study this. It seems like most people, once they break through those early memories, it is a completely transformational, spiritual consciousness experience. And this is why I'm at Gaia, because I'm less interested in nuts and bolts. I'm interested in the consciousness and transformation and spiritual aspect of contact. And that's what we do here. That's why I'm so passionate about UFOs and NHI, non-human intelligence, and working at Gaia, because we're the only people, one of the only people really pushing that message, that it's all oneness. It's all about consciousness. The mainstream, as disclosure unfolds, because the next couple of years, I think we're really going to have disclosure. Things are picking up and we can get into that. A lot's happened in the last couple of days, actually, I'm sure you're aware of. As we get into it, the mainstream will pick up like this base, this base in the Southwest has the bodies, this base has the UFOs. But what they're not going to discuss right away is the transformation, the consciousness, who the beings are. And that's where I feel like I need to come in, and Gaia needs to come in to help explain that to the public as they get ready, because it could be really shocking. Anyways, Melissa, that was a mega rant. I think I answered the question, but here we are.
No, I love it. And really, when I look at my own stages of awakening to information, there's almost always a little bit of grief that goes along with it, because I have to shed the old reality that I was identified with. But it's interesting because I think most people think of UFO encounters as something that happens to you from the outside. But as you've mentioned, so many experiencers, even things from Dolores Cannon, have talked about it as something that is almost pulled out from inside of them. But that makes me wonder too, because I'm going to admit that I am very skeptical of at least what we've been told about our space exploration. So then it brings up even other questions. I don't believe we've ever even really done it. So then that makes me wonder, are we actually even able to visit other planets? Are these beings coming from other planets, or could it be more of an interdimensional entity?
Great question. I love this question. From what I understand, there seems to be two phenomenon happening. And they have a crossroads, or they have connections that connect them. And let me explain it, and I'll get to your question. So I'd like to bring up Dorothy Izat. She was a famous experiencer right after Project Blue Book in the 70s. She filmed famously 10,000 feet of film of this light phenomenon in the sky. Dr. Edgar Hynek from Project Blue Book even studied her after Blue Book was done. And she's the real deal. There's a great documentary about it. Anyways, she was interacting with interdimensional beings that seemed to be more connected to spirituality. What was interesting is after a while she was interacting with them, she asked, like, are you guys UFOs? Are you aliens? And they're like, no, we're from a different reality, a different dimension, for whatever that means to you. I can't really define that. And these beings that were communicating with her, they can show up any shape, light, form. They seem to be like genies coming from another dimension. They go, no, but we know the UFO people. Like they're connected to us. They kind of understand where we are, and we kind of interact with them a little bit. And then she would see both. She would see this light phenomenon and then a classic silver disc UFO at the same time. So there's kind of two different phenomena. Now that's consistent if you really get into all the reports about what's happening. So she's a great example to kind of set how like there is something interdimensional going on with these interdimensional phenomena, but the UFOs themselves are also interdimensional. This is where it gets confusing. They travel, I like to say this word confidently, but I don't really know what it means, transdimensionally. So they travel in a different reality to get here. It's like that whole like thing from Interstellar where you fold a piece of paper and you put a pencil through it and you can warp space and time. That's what they're doing. They're not necessarily from another dimension. They could be from a different time. That's something when you get into this that realizes that the way they can travel through time. So these beings might not be from our time. They could be from our known universe, from a planet. Yes, I think that is true. There's E.T.s from planets out there that visit us. I think that is 100% real. But the more not interesting, but the weird part about this is there seems to be a second phenomenon that is like these light beings. It's almost more like what Chris Bledsoe talks about. He sees all these orbs everywhere all the time, which is a fascinating thing. He encounters the lady. The lady's been seen through multiple cultures throughout time. This lady who gives prophetic messages, but she seems like an ET, but she kind of looks human, which is weird. And then you get into like the religion and spirituality and how religions are formed and how much this lady's seen in religions. And it just gets really fascinating. So long story short, I think interdimensional is a word we should be using, but we got to be careful how we use it. Could these beings all be from another dimension? Yes. Like another reality and coming here, but they're more physical? Yes. Could they be coming from a higher realm, like the astral realm or the like a realm above us? Yes, that could be true too. Or are they traveling just in these dimensional things? I think all are true. And it is confusing because the nature of the universe is so complex and beautiful, and we don't fully understand it. So I think people are using the right words as this dawn of like understanding of what's happening. We just got to stay open to it all, because what I just said, like, I don't know. I put money on, like, why am I betting against myself? I would bet money that something dimensional is going on. Exactly what and who and why, I don't know that yet, but that's definitely where we should be thinking. And I think that's one of the things that's going to shock people in disclosure. It's like, oh, they're not just from a planet. These intelligence is from another place. It's manifesting here. That's the other thing. Like, people speculate that even the UFOs aren't from another planet, like the physical craft. They're literally manifestations from another dimension. Almost like think of us like standing in the sun, and our shadow hits the ground. The shadow is a projection of us. So it's almost like they're from somewhere else above, projecting themselves down into our reality. That could be 100% true. It might not even be about beings from another planet. It could be all from another reality. But all that being said, to clarify for the audience, so I can keep it a little more 101, I think there are E.T.s and other planets that do interact with us. I think that is a thing. I also think there's something even more profound and interesting going on with these interdimensional intelligence coming from another reality. If I had to put money on it, that's what I would say the two major things that are going on.
Well, even the word planet, it's basically an extension of the word plane, which should be kind of the opposite of what we've been told the planet even is. I don't know. I'm always looking into these things, but it also makes sense how you talked about when people are in contact with these beings, it feels like love, it feels like light, it feels like a higher frequency. And so to me, it makes me wonder, I would say it's almost easier for me to believe than people suddenly flying through the air coming from Mars or whatever it is. It's like, why can't we see them? Like, how are they coming so quickly? Like, why aren't there more? But when I think of it as interdimensional, maybe it's because of all the spiritual work I've done. I can almost guarantee it. But that to me is like, oh yeah, that's plausible. That feels right, especially when you look at the fact that we can only hear such a small fracture of the spectrum of sound, or we can only see such a tiny piece of the spectrum of light. And then we have the audacity to say this is all that exists when we know that there's so much we can't see and hear and experience. So why would we even be turned off to the idea that there might be beings who access this light and this sound that are right there that we are just not able to experience quite yet? Especially when you think of the idea that you talked about how people that come in contact with them, they change so quickly. And a lot of the spiritual understanding that I've gained, even when I've looked into how to see auras, how to expand your intuition, how to develop your own sort of psychic network, almost everything I've read says it's so much easier when you study with somebody who already has these abilities. Like, just being in contact with them almost unlocks something in you. And so that would make sense to me that the aliens, interdimensional beings, would do the same.
Oh, I love what you just said. There's a lot that I want to comment on there. Yes, absolutely. Like, being in their presence, like, opens you up, basically. And the same thing if you're with someone who's psychic. I love that you brought that up, because one of the aspects that's going to be really strange for people is contact actually leads to psychic gifts. Now I'm going to get into my family. First, I want to start with the guy, Raphael Lugo. Like, he literally developed all these psychic gifts after contact, intuition, down to telekinesis at one point. Like, I have video of him like moving things around with his hand very slightly, like super intense stuff. It seems to be they open up your intuition. Then you, but literally walking around our world opens up other people's psychic gifts. It's kind of incredible. It's like a consciousness virus that, like, the E.T.s open up someone and they walk around, open up everyone else. I think that is so interesting and beautiful. But wait, where was I going with that? So
opening up the psychic gifts.
Oh yeah. So my family. This is what's really interesting. I grew up in a small town where I had a UFO event, which we can get to. But the more interesting part was my family had a lot of strange stuff happen in this generational farmhouse. One of the family members, my aunt, had classic psychic gifts. She was actually more closer to the kid in The Sixth Sense, Harry Joel Osment, where she would literally have interactions in her mind's eye or full-on apparitions of deceased people coming to her, and she eventually figured out they were asking her to do something. We have a famous story where somebody, when she was older as an adult at work, someone at work she barely knew, his father passed. The father came to her in her mind's eye and said, "Hey, can you tell my daughter there's $30,000 under this tree somewhere in Massachusetts?" And she's like, "Okay, I'll go tell her." Went and told her. They dug up the money. It was like $29,800 and something dollars. So they weren't the apparition wasn't 100% accurate, but it was pretty close. It rounded up, and it was this crazy story in my family. So, but I always thought like she just was psychic. She was born psychic. We had a haunted house. I wasn't really connecting at all. But what I've realized by talking to people like Whitley Strieber, working with my friend Skitz, and just a ton of research is that actually my family is probably a generational contactee family, not as like heavy duty as the things you see in the media. I think most people, it's like you kind of have some memories of it. It's not so hardcore. But I think my aunt was part of that in some way, and her psychic gifts are definitely related, because everything that happened in that house when I was younger seemed paranormal, but now that I'm older, it seems like ET contact. Classic, my mom waking up to 3 gray aliens and looking at her through a window, feeling fear, and then all of a sudden being frozen, shadow people, footsteps, things walking around the house, time slips. I've been home, and one of my major UFO sightings was inside the farmhouse looking out, which is really interesting. Like, why would that happen? I've also heard time slips where like this, it was so funny. It gave me I've never had the chills so hard in my life. I could hear old timey music and people playing cards, and I kept hearing it, but there was no one in the house. And then I realized it was coming from a room, and it wasn't coming from the window. I did everything. I was like, where's this coming from? This is crazy. And it hit me so hard because all of a sudden multiple people were like, oh my God, you heard that too? Like, I've heard that too. In fact, my brother's partner, like in the middle of the night, woke up and thought there was a full blown party going on. This is like a giant farmhouse. Went downstairs. It didn't seem like the lights were on. And then she went down and there was nothing there. No lights, nobody there. So like, it's really fascinating that like this house it probably wasn't the house. It was the family that lives there. It had nothing to do. My aunts won't sleep in it today, which is just wild. But anyways, the psychic gifts part, like my aunt really got hit with that. My mom has a really good intuition. I feel like women are generally better with their intuition. I feel like they're more accepting of it. And once I made that connection, I was like, oh my God, my family, why am I so obsessed with it? Like, I've had some weird experiences, but like usually you're not this obsessed with disclosure and ufology unless you've had an experience. It's like this, like I'm a 10 out of 10. Like, it's all I can think about. You know what I mean? It's pretty wild. But yeah, so I come from a generational farmhouse where it seems like contact's been going on. There's multiple psychic gifts. It seems connected to contact. And my family is really interesting. It goes back generations. Like literally my great-great-grandmother has a famous story in Michigan of a giant UFO classic hovering over a car. The car shuts down. That's usually a sign that you're being taken, you know, in some way. And then every single person has at least one good story leading down to me. It seems like they are following you. And that's what the research suggests too, is like there seems to be following families. That's a thing. To what end? I can't fully speculate on that. But these are the things that as disclosure unravels, people are going to struggle with. And that's part of the reason why they're holding back. Because like, that's so wild what I just said. And 10 years ago, or even 15 years ago, I might've been like, what are you saying to me, Josh? That's so random, you know? And now I'm like, I'm preaching it everywhere I can. I don't care. I'm so lit up. I'm trying to reduce the stigma. It's like my number one thing is like, make experiencers feel comfortable coming forward and talking about it. Because the stigma is not like this around the world. Like in South America, they're so open to it. But up here, the legacy programs did a good job of spreading misinformation through the media to make us scared and ridicule it. What a powerful combo. You're terrified of it, but you also want to make fun of it. So my goal is to really just blow through that stigma and just knock it to the floor. And then hopefully as we move forward disclosure, not just Navy pilots can come forward, but people with real experiences.
I love that. I feel like that's part of my life's purpose in general, is reducing the stigma of everything. I'll straight up tell you about my pregnancy hemorrhoids. I don't give a fuck. So, but I know that a lot of people that have these contact experiences lose interest in the life that they were living, whether it's jobs or relationships, or really the whole matrix, the structure. It just kind of stops mattering in the same way. And so with some people, like you've mentioned, it's this big awakening, and others it's destabilization. Have you noticed what creates one versus the other?
Great question. Yeah, I think it's some people just never getting help. Like, again, like when most people just remember the most terrifying thing that's happened to you during a contact experience. And I think there's probably a biological reason for that. When something super scary happens, your brain probably memorizes it in a different way, right? And then that's all they remember at first, because that's the only thing that breaks through. Most of us don't remember. I have a feeling this is happening on a large scale, and most people have no idea. But the people who do remember, that's the first thing. They're like, And then that would just make them terrified of the whole. Of course it would. Like if you just woke up, you're like, oh my God, I was on a ship. I was taken against my will. I was frozen. They were doing something weird, reproductive to me. Of course that's terrifying. I'm not trying to say it isn't, but once you get deeper into what they're actually doing, and I just put this reel out last night with this experiencer Skits, like had a regression and he fully remembered details he didn't remember before. It's so powerful. And it's like this hauntingly beautiful scene of these E.T.s doing these hybrid babies because they're worried about the future of the planet and they want to make sure we can live here if we destroy it. And it's not about them. They're not, the whole rumor about like, oh, their genetics are messed up. They don't know how to love anymore. That whole thing. That's not what Skits' memories were called. These beings were just literally trying to help us in case things went bad. And then they were even training Skits. This is the craziest part. And this is in a lot of books. A lot of people say this. I know it's going to sound crazy to the audience, but while he was on the ship, he remembers being put in a simulator where he could learn to control the craft with his mind. And for a future event, because the E.T.s, in case there was a catalysm, started by humans, they want to go around and save people, but they realize that they can't do it because people won't get on a ship with an E.T. because it would look too weird. But they're training humans to do it so they can fly around and pick people up in a time of great need. Now, I know what I just said is so crazy, but it's consistent. And he remembered this with crystal clear detail, and it matches so many other people and how they explain it. It's just so fascinating.
Oh, that is fascinating. And I don't know if the audience will be super shocked. I interviewed Dolores Cannon's daughter back in episode 425.
I'm going to save space. I'm not going to stop saying that. I'm just going to go deep then.
Like I said, go deep. If not for them, for me. But
I love that.
It's so fun being immersed in this world for years because, I mean, even as I've shared, the longer I dig, the deeper I go, I change my relationship to self. I change my relationship to my reality, my understanding of the world around me. So I'm curious for you, has your own sense of what you are, what consciousness is, what death means, what's real actually changed?
Oh, absolutely. I have all the hallmarks of an experiencer. Like every aspect of my life has changed because of my own experiences, my own research. Yeah, like I'm 100% feel, I can't prove it, that this is not the end. I'm not worried about what happens next. This feels like some sort of gigantic simulation, a divine simulation where we're here to learn and grow. These ET beings, we probably know them once we pass. We could be the ET beings in lifetimes. It feels like this beautiful, complex, evolutionary consciousness driving, expanding machine that we're in. And it's changed every aspect of my life. Like reincarnation was a term I didn't really believe in. I was just whatever. And then now I'm like, wow, like there's actually real evidence for that, which that's a whole different topic. And the connection to ET stuff really fascinates me. And I really resonate with that. It's one of the few things spiritually that really feels real to me. I kind of, as a young boy, rejected all the mainstream religions for various complicated reasons. And then like my whole life, I've been searching for spirituality. And now I'm at a point where I'm like, I have, things I believe in. I believe that's real. I changed, like, I can't explain. Like I was a college educated dude who probably should have been a psychologist. And I went into TV because I realized I just want to cover these topics. So my entire life was changed by this topic. Like I'm driven to only talk about it. I'm basically full-time UFO. I mean, I investigate for MUFON. I host a TV show. I'm the head of production at a place where we make hundreds of hours of UFO content. I'm talking to you right now about it. Like I'm all in. And like, that's a big leap knowing the stigmas out there, right? But I just didn't care. I was like, no matter what happens, I'll be successful. I'm going to push it. I feel driven by like glorious purpose, which is a thing a lot of experiencers feel, like they're supposed to do something, like they're waiting to do something. I had that feeling, just like Skits has, like he's supposed to do something when a cataclysm starts. Mine's a little different. I feel like I'm supposed to be communicating about this all the time to get it out to other people. I feel like I'm part of disclosure. I feel lit up with purpose. I really do. Like, it's so funny. Like one of the things I always get mad about in life is when like you hear a college professor or someone talk about like, don't try to find a purpose. Just, get really good at something and figure out what you're passionate about. And I just like hate that talk so hard because I've been driven so hard by like this deep need to express this that I can't get it out of my system. Like it's never enough. Like I have to keep saying it. Like I'll do this podcast and I'll feel great about it. I got the message out. Melissa has a great audience and it's out there. But then tomorrow I'll be like, okay, what do I got to do today? I got to make my next reel on socials. I got to keep pushing. Change my spirituality, the way I show up in the world. I'm definitely really into keeping our environment clean. I don't want to talk about climate change or anything. I'm just saying like all the classic things of an experiencer I have. I'm not claiming to be an experiencer, though. I'm claiming that I'm most likely from a family of generational contact. And obviously, in some way, I've been touched. I have no memories of being on a ship. I had 2 UFO sightings in my life that were significant. One of them was actually a wild story that I could talk in a minute. But yeah, every aspect of my life changed, just like someone who's had contact.
Well, and if you really think about it, I believe in oneness. And so the illusion that we're all separate is something most people cling to. But if you're open to the idea that, our bodies don't actually end where we think they do, we have these energy fields, you're connected to your lineage in a way, you're connected to everything in a way, and nature in a way, even things that are totally unrelated to this episode. I've talked to people who have studied the secret language of cells and talk about how just being in nature, our cells actually communicate with the cells of trees, and it can stimulate healing within us. And so if you're open to these ideas, if you're connected deeply to people who have had these experiences, for you to have your one body doesn't need to be taken to a UFO and probed in order to feel the impact of that kind of contact.
Well said. Yeah, that's how I feel, honestly. Like I'm so lit up by it. I think it's the most important issue on the planet. I can't believe more people aren't into it, and how profound it is. It feels like the number one thing. It's going to be the biggest story in human history as it unfolds. And that statement I've made a few times in the last couple of weeks, and it really upsets people because of everything going on with the Epstein files right now. It's really, people think like anything else is just like, you shouldn't even talk about it. And I totally get it, because I want all those files released too, but they're 2 separate things to me. And I think the revelation that we're not alone, that there's something going on that's far greater than us, that is so beautifully complicated, that could be connected to human origins, could be connected to the nature of the universe, to our own transformation, asked to answer the big questions of why we're here, never mind the technology, will be the biggest story the world's ever seen. And I cannot stop. I can't stop. Like you couldn't, I'd be depressed. Like, it's so funny. I look back at my life, and when I wasn't focused on it, I struggled. Like life felt bleak to me, or like I was just more easily depressed, and ended up being, no, I just wasn't following my true self. Like I was like, there's a famous Alan Watts quote, like about you're a ship. And if you go 2 degrees off course, eventually in 10 years, you're 360, you're 100 degrees off course. But I've reconnected that by coming to Gaia, coming to this place with like-minded people, full of people with contact experiences. That's not what we're all about here. We're about the evolution of consciousness and creating a transformational network to the world. Just UFOs and the connection of consciousness is just one part of the overall thing here. But I had to come here because I was so driven by it, so passionate that I needed to make a change in the world. And here I am today ranting about it with you.
Well, the way I see the Epstein files, I tend to hold multiple possibilities at once. And I find the way they release the Epstein files to be rather suspicious, and possibly purposely hijacking our emotional response systems for other possibly nefarious purposes. However, what I will say is that those files have opened a lot of people's minds. There have been people that have ridiculed me for my open-mindedness that are now coming to me asking questions or sending me things. And I'm like, girl, I sent you this stuff 6 years ago and you literally laughed at me. Now, I guess I'm just open to it now. And so it's interesting, because even though for some it seems unrelated, even though there are files in there that talk about disclosure, it feels like a stepping stone that some people needed in order to open their mind to the possibility of a different reality, whether that's the true density of our plane or the just the fact that things are not as they seem.
No, that's fascinating. It's almost like a shamanic initiation, in the sense that you have to be broken up before you can remember anything. You're right. It could be serving that purpose, because that's actually consistent in contact experiences. That's the scary part. It's a shamanic initiation. It's like doing ayahuasca. In the first 20 minutes, you're like, what have I done? This is terrifying. I feel really sick. But then like an hour later, you're like, oh my God, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me, you know? So that's really interesting. It could provide the psychological soil for people to be more accepting to fringe ideas and literally opening them up. There could be a silver lining to all this, but I want to be very careful with how I talk about it.
Yeah.
Especially representing Gaia.
I'd say one of my concerns would be, I wonder if they're going to use disclosure as more fear porn rather than actually opening us to the truth of what it is, because I don't think I've ever seen the mainstream media just willingly give me good news.
Right. Now, this morning, it was just straight darkness. I put on the mainstream news. I don't know why I did that. Yeah, that's the big fear. So right now, that is what everyone in the community is pushing for. Is like there's two things right now. There's a fear-based disclosure. We got to secure our airspace. There's people being hurt by UFOs. What are they? They could be doing this to us. They could be making hybrid babies to take over the planet slowly and infiltrate us. There's so much fear porn out there, but the evidence doesn't say that. The evidence says they're benevolent, but that's what we have to fight. That's part of my mission, is to fight against that. Because why do they want the fear porn, Melissa? They want it because they want to spend more money on weaponizing space. There's this famous long story that Dr. Greer brought forward with Carol Rosin. Carol Rosin was Werner von Braun's, worked with him. Werner von Braun was one of the German scientists from Operation Paperclip that came over and started, I forget exactly how he headed up our rocket program. And he was a super smart guy, but he was German. And he famously told her on his deathbed that this group, the Legacy program, was going to use different things to scare the public into spending money on space and just more for war. And in the end, the last card, after all these different steps, which happened over the last couple of decades, they were going to use a false flag E.T. attack event, which we could pull off because we have their technology. It can make it seem like E.T.s, and then be like, look, they attacked us. We got to spend trillions on space weapons. These things are bad. Let us help you humans. That is one really fear-based place that I hope we don't go, because that's not true, people. Is there bad E.T.s somewhere in the universe? Probably. It's a gigantic infinite universe. I'm sure there's guys out there that don't mean us harm in some way, but it doesn't seem like that's what's happening in the majority of it. It doesn't seem like that's what's happening here, and you shouldn't fear it. The evidence does suggest they're benevolent. They could have wiped us out a long time ago. We're dropping nuclear bombs like dumb monkeys in the forest, just killing each other and going to war all the time, and they're not even stopping that, really. So they clearly we have free will. They're not they're compassionate for us, but I just really, that's my big thing. So what do I call myself? I call myself a UFO advocate or a disclosure advocate, because I'm really passionate about how we disclose. I think it should be slow drip. I think compassionate disclosure is a little slower. There needs to be a big moment, but I don't think day one they should go into everything. We need to do that, and they need to focus on what's positive. Now, some of the stuff that I want to clarify that came out of Congress in 2003 with David Grush was they asked him, has anyone been hurt by a UFO? And the answer is yes. People have been hurt. This has been studied by Dr. Gary Nolan in Stanford. He studied all these people in the military who had close interactions with craft and ET, or mostly craft, and they had injuries. But most of those injuries, if not all of them, were not because the aliens pointed a laser gun at them or beat them up. It was because they got too close to the engine. They got too close to the craft and didn't understand what it was, and radiation got them. So what happened to them was inadvertent. There's very few cases of ETs actually responding negatively to us. And it's usually when we engage them and shoot at them. If anything, they've had extraordinary restraint. But once in a while, they give us a quick backhand when we go too far. But that's it. That is all that's going on. There's no dark agenda. So what we must do as a public, and this is when I get my activist hat on, is not to buy the fear. And obviously they want us to fear it. That's how they control us. It is nothing to fear. You can make open contact yourself. It's already been repeated by hundreds of people around the world. I know people who work around me who've made contact through consciousness protocols. It's always loving. It always touched them. It didn't damage their life. Nothing bad happened to them. You know what's actually underreported is healings. So most of the major cases, by the way, that are out there, that seem negative, especially the old abduction stories, most of those involved healings as well, but it was left out of most of the literature. Preston Dennett, who's been on Gaia on Beyond Belief, really talks about this. He really goes into how many people have been healed by UFOs and why they're being healed by them. Not just them. Sometimes their parents get healed. I was just reading a case the other day where a woman witnessed her parents having a actually, no, this is it's actually Skits. Skits was talking about how he had a memory of his parents being wanded in their bed, and he asked the ETs what they're doing, and they were like, "Oh, we're just checking in on your parents to make sure they're healthy, so they can stay alive long enough to help raise you," and stuff like that. It was all benevolent reasons. It wasn't just anything dark. So the evidence is overwhelming that they're benevolent. Again, I just want to be careful. There's people out there with very negative experiences. I'm not saying it's all positive, but I think the evidence is heavily in favor that we are being interacted with benevolent intelligences from other planets and other dimensions that have most likely are either neutral or at least are helpful in some way. Because at the end of the day, think about it. They showed up like a swarm when we detonated nuclear weapons. And then they would fly over, like there's all this books written on it. They fly over our nuclear sites all the time. They shut them down. They mess with us a little bit. They're clearly sending a message like, what are you doing? Stop, stop with the nuclear weapons. I think they have our best interest in mind, generally, at least most of the races. But again, just very careful. People have negative aspects. I want to keep saying that because I definitely gotten blowback for that before. And I want to be clear that is real as well.
Well, that makes me wonder. So if the phenomenon responds to consciousness, and if contact is in some way participatory, what does that mean about how we're supposed to be showing up? Is there some sort of inner posture that invites it versus one that closes it off?
Yeah, absolutely. Before I get into that part, there is a physical aspect to this. Gary Nolan did a whole study on military experiencers, and apparently they all have a larger or more developed caudate putamen, which is a structure that connects your left and right hemisphere, as far as I understand. So there seems to be a physical component. Some people literally just can. There's actually research and genetics on that. Like there's an area of the world where a lot of these people came out of. There's a whole rabbit hole I could go into that's fascinating. But ignore that. You don't have to have an elevated caudate putamen. It's the right state of mind. It's the right frequency. I know that word has been used like crazy in our space, but it's true. It's literally like the frequency in meditation. It's putting yourself in a field where you can connect with oneness in the consciousness in a deep meditative state and reach out. If you're in that posture and you're coming at it with a childlike innocence, with a love, without any doubt, very positive. It's not negative, folks. Like if you're I almost swore, if you're in a bad state, if you're angry, you're not going to make contact. But why is it that contact happens when you're in a loving, peaceful state? What does that suggest? Like they can't be bad. They literally won't talk to you unless you reach out with love. They don't even want to interact with you if you're mean or you're angry or you're full of fear. They won't. They won't even come down to you because they realize they can't even vibrate near you because it might be so shocking. And that's another thing. If you're vibrating at a higher frequency and they come down, you're closer to their frequency. They're vibrating up here. If you're really low frequency and these things come to you, it's not a pleasant experience because you're not ready for it. It's too much. You're like, oh my God, what is happening? But if you're kind of close to them and you're feeling love and you're in a great state, then the contact can happen. So yeah, you can put yourself in a state where you can make contact more easily. And one thing I'd ask all your friends out there, folks who've been meditating for a very, very long time, I bet they all have a strange story about seeing something or connecting with something. A lot of people I know do accidentally, not trying. But there's these protocols out there today you can do in that state that up your chances of seeing something. I've had a couple interesting experiences, but nothing that I would be like, it happened. I might be a little more dense. My caudate putamen might not be as developed as other people. But anyone can make contact. Anyone. I want to be clear about that.
That makes sense to me. It's like a frequency alignment thing, and even just here on Earth, I can feel the density of people. I can tell when I'm like, ooh, this energy doesn't feel like something I want to step into. But I know that John Matt kept finding that the contact experience didn't really matter as much as what somebody did with it afterwards. It was almost like integration versus avoidance, which is really the same fork that we see after every kind of awakening. But what would you say integration looks like specifically in this context?
Oh, that's a great question. I love that question. So one of the things I noticed is changing their art. A lot of these people either have no artistic abilities or have a certain art form they practice, painting, music, writing. In my case, it was a guy changing his rapping style from gangster rap to conscious rap. That's how he used his gifts that everyone has to help change the world. That was one integration. The other was how they show up in their relationships, how they treat animals. And that all changed as well. I think the clearest example of that is changing their art form. That is like a real thing. But they'll also change their careers. If they have a career that's just not like, maybe helping people as much as they would like, they might switch into more like social work or just something that is straight helping people, more religious or monk-like in a sense. Those are the integrations I see people do. They take better care of themselves. Like every aspect they integrate. Like it's kind of like John Mack said, it is like the fastest way to enlightenment. Which is a loaded word. I don't even know what that really means, but it seems like that's what's happening. People become more enlightened beings. They show up with love in their life better. They're less negative. They don't gossip and talk trash as much anymore. Like it's amazing. These people, like my buddy Skitz is like the most loving dude ever. He was like this 6'2" like dude who could be so intimidating if he wanted to, like tatted up. And he's just so loving and gentle and love bombs the heck out of you. Like he's clearly operating differently. Like he clearly got woken up and his brain changed. Like it is fascinating. And I just love that question, because you're right. It's not the part that's actually bigger is what happens afterwards and how you show up on the planet. And that's actually the more interesting aspect, because like it seems on purpose, like they're waking up people for the collective consciousness, and we all grow together, and the entire race grows basically. And the more people you have like that, it spreads out. The people around you vibrate higher. It's such a beautiful, amazing experience. And I just hope the fear gets removed from it one day.
Yeah, I think so. I think we're getting there. Like I said, I see more people waking up in the last 4 days than the last month. More people waking up in the last month than in the last 4 years. It's pretty mind-blowing what's happening. I feel like I've been waiting for this. And when I look at enlightenment, really even just breaking down the word, it's like you're getting lighter. And we've been talking so much about the density of this planet or the density of certain belief systems versus kind of expanding to a higher frequency and feeling lighter, feeling more open, opening yourself up to a broader spectrum of light and sound and experience. Yeah. And so that's how I view enlightenment. I don't think it's just like the poof, I'm Jesus, but
right, exactly.
I'm curious though, for someone who hasn't had a direct experience, but maybe they're feeling something pulling them toward this, kind of like you, like some part of them already knows this is real. What would you say is the most useful thing that they can do right now? And not necessarily just to prepare for disclosure, but to prepare themselves.
Okay, like more like spiritually and more for themselves. Okay. That's a great question. I mean, the obvious first thing you need to do if you're new to this is just go watch a lot of content. We have a lot of great stuff on Gaia you can watch. There's a new documentary called The Age of Disclosure that just came out, which is fascinating. It has all these high-level whistleblowers, at least stating that it's real. It's less spiritual. That's just a good starting point to be like, okay, it's real. What does it mean? The next step is preparing yourself spiritually. I think a heavy meditation practice is going to be good to keep yourself calm in case things get rocky, because it could be crazy when they first announce this stuff, the stock markets, it could be a lot of chaos. You want to be just personally calm for that. But you also, in the meditative state, matching the frequency will lead to a better world. The more of us that are meditating and the more of us that are doing that, I mean, the Maharishi effect has famously been studied, where just thousands of people meditating in an area lowers violent crime. We've done things at Gaia where we've done intention experiments where we lowered crime. We just, in 2 different American cities, by utilizing our base to all meditate at the same time and send an intention to it. Now I'm getting a little off topic, but I think that's the key. The key is preparing yourself with knowledge and doing a lot of research, but careful. There's a lot of disinformation out there. There is. And even like I don't know, like there's some things I might believe and I'm going to find out were completely BS. So you just got to be open-minded. Don't accept anything without entertaining it, but develop a calming spiritual practice. And I think the best way of doing that is through meditation.
I love that. You answered like 4 questions at once because I do think that this moment right now where we are, it's asking something of us. It's asking for us to show up in our lives a little bit differently in the world, to be the frequency that we want to call in. And I think a huge part of that is not being sucked into, like we've talked a lot about, just the fear mongering, realizing there are conflicts of interest of people who might hold power of giving us information versus withholding, and knowing that, because it can help us discern, okay, well, this might not just be clean information. There might be an agenda behind it. And I feel like that's guided me in a lot of different areas. And so is there anything else you want to leave us with before we tell people how to find you?
Yeah, I would say, I just want to reiterate a couple things. I think that the impact of disclosure could have positive benefits on us today and future generations in a way that's not fully understood, from the technology to understanding the big questions about life. We could head towards a more perfect union or a more perfect utopia as a species. There'll never be a utopia. I think it's something we need to all collectively help and reduce the stigma. It's okay to talk about your experiences. It's okay to support and believe people without evidence. That's the one thing I do. Like for experiencers, I just believe them, because maybe one of them is lying to me if I talk to like 50 of them, or a couple are, but that's not the way to go about this. I treat it with love. These people are sharing something that is so powerful and could cause them such problems socially. Like that's such a big deal. My heart is so full of love for these people. Imagine having the most extraordinary experience possible, traumatic and also transformational, and you can't talk about it to anyone. Like that needs to end immediately. for the growth and the betterment of not just them, but the species overall. So Melissa, I just thank you for giving me this opportunity to come on your podcast. You have a big following, and to talk about this, because I think it's really, really important.
Yeah, so do I. And thank you for being a part of Gaia. It's my guilt-free streaming service that I just put on when I'm putting on makeup or getting ready or whatever it is. And so for listeners that want to learn more from you, where's the best place to connect?
Well, please, sign up for Gaia and watch all our program and lots of good stuff. I host Cosmic Disclosure. I co-host it. Please check out those seasons. That's where I really interviewed the mics I talked about, among a bunch of other really awesome people, from Richard Doherty, Sebastian Martin, and a few others that I'm not remembering off the top of my head. Please follow me and find me online on Instagram's great, or Facebook at UFO Elder. At UFO Elder. Please follow me there. I'm always posting new reels and anything breaking in the space. I love it. It's funny, like a year ago, I quit social media altogether, and then I started hosting the show, and now I'm super obsessed and using social media in a good way and staying off the bad topics. Like, there's no politics in my feed anymore. It's just straight UFOs. I love it.
Want to work through this week's Mind Love Challenge with others? The Mind Love Collective is a free community with monthly themed calls, weekly challenge accountability, and real support throughout the year. So join us at mindlove.com/join. Thanks for giving your mind a little love today, and I'll see you next week.